And today we decided to show you another collection of soldering rules because you warmly appreciated our previous videos on how to solder correctly and on common soldering mistakes. And if you haven't seen them yet, they will be right here in the podcast. Let's probably start with the most basic. That is the workspace. It should be, first and foremost, comfortable. Because after a few hours of soldering in a lotus position, your back definitely won't thank you. Also, don't forget about good lighting, because it directly affects the quality of soldering and the convenience of work. And of course, good ventilation, because inhaling fumes while soldering is not the healthiest thing. Next, what we would like to draw your attention to are the safety rules. Besides those we talked about in the video about mistakes in soldering, there are several others. First, is that a falling soldering iron has no handle? Because it's better to sacrifice the tip than your hand. And to prevent this from happening, use soldering iron stands. They should be heavy and stable, and be placed in the right location. A very important rule suggested by our viewers in the comments. Always check the cable insulation, the power supply of the soldering iron before starting work. And third, this is a mandatory rule when working in areas with limited access or in field conditions. Never solder anything at eye level or above your eyes. You should look at what you are soldering from above. Or use protective goggles like these. It is also worth noting, no hand contact with the eyes while soldering, because no acids, fumes, or cleaners contribute to improving vision. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as you'll miss out on many more useful and interesting videos about the process itself. Soldering. Not everyone realizes that an ordinary tweezer, besides convenience, also provides additional heat dissipation, so don't hesitate to use it. If these are large, massive components, but they are heat sensitive, use additional heat sinks. So how do you solder then, you might ask? Get a more powerful soldering iron. Regarding fluxes, you probably already know that there is an incredible variety of fluxes, and all of them need to be cleaned off. But what about no-clean, halogen-free fluxes for BGA soldering, you might ask? They also need to be cleaned off whenever possible. A toothbrush plus isopropyl alcohol is a great post-processing method for the soldering area, the desoldering process. Both beginners and experienced craftsmen know that to desolder components, you should use either a copper braid or a solder sucker. But sometimes it happens that somewhere an element is soldered with lead-free, high melting point solder. To desolder it, we heat it, and end up overheating the element itself. This is not quite good. Therefore, in addition to a soldering iron, you should use the so-called Rose's alloy. This is a low-temperature solder that dilutes the high melting point solder and allows it to be removed without any problems. And since we're talking about temperature, I want to emphasize that the higher the temperature, no, it's not better, because the optimal temperature for soldering most components is 280 to 320 degrees. One of the nuances worth remembering is the proper stripping of insulation. Of course, the easiest way to do this is with wire cutters, a knife, or a scalpel, but you risk damaging it. Either the copper strands themselves, or if it's there, the additional insulation. For example, like in a regular network cable. Therefore, use a stripper, my friends. And always very, very carefully bite off thin multi-stranded ones, wires, because strands from very thin wires can easily stick to fingers, tools, or just remain at the workspace. In this way, they can end up on the board, and this, in turn, can eventually lead to a short circuit. And, of course, clean up your workspace after finishing the job. And that's all. Write in the comments what other soldering life hacks you know, and what rules you follow when working. Don't forget to check the description under the video, as you'll find links to all the products shown in this video there. And until we meet again.